welcome to everybody. I'm very glad to be with you and with 4 directors of the Italian Cultural Institute that host this meeting, this talk with Giuliano Peparini, Francesco Morosi, and Professor Graziosi. I'm very glad and very thankful to Chiara Avanzato from Edinburgh, Katia Pizzi from London, to Dr. Manson from Toronto, and Professor and Dr. Cappelli from Montreal. I would like to give them the floor so that they can say hello to the public, and afterwards I shall introduce very shortly the Istituto del Dramma Antico, the Institute of Ancient Dramas, and our activities for summer 2023.
Hello, everyone, and thanks so much, Marina Valensise. The Italian Cultural Institute in Edinburgh is particularly delighted to collaborate again this year with INDA to present the season number 58 of the classical plays at the Greek Theatre in Siracusa. And again this year, thanks to INDA, the theatre's directors, the actors, the classicists, the theatre students, all the artists and the staff working together to stage the plays at the Greek Theatre in Siracusa are and will be, I quote, the witnesses of another time in our time, the ambassadors of another word in our world. And Italo Calvino used this expression to define an important Italian writer of the 20th century, but I believe that this definition applies perfectly to all the people involved in the performances at the Greek theatre and to the performances themselves. And this is particularly true for the contemporary but Homeric Ulysses of the last Odyssey, created by the director Giuliano Peparini and the translator Francesco Morosi, who are with us today. Marina Valensise will introduce them later. So I just want to say a big thanks to them. Thanks to Giuliano Peparini, thanks to Francesco Morosi, and thanks so much to Marina Valensise and Barbara Graziosi for being with us today. And I would like also to say thank you to Gaspare Urso from INDA for his great support in organizing this talk. And since Giuliano Peparini himself has described his Odyssey as a play taught for a wide spectatorship, we would like this online presentation to reach a wide audience as well. So we would like to invite everyone in Italy, in the UK, in Canada and beyond to go to Siracusa. And by we, I mean INDA and the 4 Italian Institute of Culture in Edinburgh, London, Montreal and Toronto, which are, as Marina Valensise said, the co-organizers of this online collaborative event. So I would like to send again my greetings to you all from Edinburgh and virtually go to London and invite Katia Pizzi, the director of the Italian Cultural Institute in London, to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiara, and hello everyone. I'm Katia Pizzi, director of the Italian Cultural Institute in London, and it is my greatest pleasure to co-introduce this event. For at least 1 century, every summer, Syracuse becomes the home of ancient drama, staging classical plays of stark contemporary appeal at the Greek theatre. This ancient site is described as, I quote, the most important classical theatre in Europe by far. So as such, it provides a unique setting for the initiatives of the Istituto Nazionale del Dramma Antico, or INDA, a foundation devoted to preserving and promoting ancient drama through the staging of high-end contemporary productions of ancient plays. So I'm truly delighted to partner with our sister institutes in Edinburgh, in Montreal and Toronto to honor this distinguished tradition, to deliver ancient drama to audiences outside Italy, and to present this year's production, which is the intriguingly entitled Ulysses, l'ultima Odissea, directed by Giuliano Peparini. So I look forward to seeing you all at the Greek Theatre in Siracusa at the end of June, and take this journey in nostalgia and the art of memory in the company of Ulysses and in the company of us all. So thank you all for being here, and over to you, Sandro, in Montreal.
Yeah, thank you, Katia. Thank you to all. And I also would like to invite you to discover the season and the works like that the Istituto Nazionale di Drammaturgia Antica is going to propose in Siracusa. It's the best place to discover the classical Greek text and classical text in general, and also the new creation that they give a different twist to all we know. Thank you to all, and enjoy the conference. I'll give you the floor to my colleague in Toronto.
Thank you, Sandra. Hello, everybody. My name is Veronica Nielsen. I'm the director of the Italian Cultural Institute in Toronto, and we are delighted to co-present the wonderful program, and especially Ulysses, Odyssey, that will take place in Syracuse. Here in Ontario, there is quite a large population of Italian Canadians, but also really Canadians that love Italian culture and follow with great interest what is happening in Italy. So this is a wonderful opportunity to present the Istituto Nazionale del Dramma Antico, INDA, to the Ontario and Western Canada population and Italian cultural enthusiasts. We are delighted to co-present with the other Italian Cultural Institute, this event. We also invite everybody to follow this presentation, if you're not following it right now, on our YouTube channel. It is recorded, and it's a wonderful opportunity to be introduced to what is going to happen in Siracusa this summer. Thank you very much from the phone.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I wish to start this short conversation with the author of a very important show by recalling that INDA, the National Institute of Ancient Drama, was born more than a century ago, exactly in 1911, by the will of a group of Sicilian patrons, and it stages since then the classic shows at the Greek Theatre of Syracuse with the participation of famous classicists and very famous artists who have left and leave an indelible mark on the history of the theatre. This year, we shall have not only 3 classical representations, namely Prometheus by Aeschylus, staged by Leonscato, Medea by Euripides, staged by Federico Tiezzi, and for the first time in the Greek theatre, a comedy by Aristophanes, La Pace, staged by Daniele Salvo, but we shall have a 4th production, namely Ulysses, Odysseus, the last Odyssey, staged by Giuliano Peparini. It is not a classical representation. It is not a work that has been written, that was written in the 5th century before Christ, like the others. It is, on the contrary, a modern show, a modern production taken from the epic poem by Homer, Odyssey, translated in a new translation by Francesco Morosi, who is a great philologist and a great classicist. He teaches at the Scuola Normale Superiore di Pisa, and he's also the translator. Last year, he translated Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, staged by Robert Carson. And the peculiarity of this 58th season at the Greek Theatre of Syracuse is that for the first time, we have involved a great choreographer and director that you have in front of you, Giuliano Peparini, who suggested us to make this production. We accepted the idea. We were delighted. We were enthusiastic about this idea because it gives us the possibility to spread and to diffuse the heritage, the classical heritage, within a circle, within an audience that is not generally involved in our shows, or that is in a way scholarly involved in our shows, namely the youngest generation of our audience. So I'm very glad to leave the floor to Giuliano Peparini. who will debut at the Greek Theatre on the 29th of June for 4 shows until July the 2nd. And then we are going to program a special representation, a special show at the end of the season on the 20th of September. So we are very glad. We thank very much Giuliano and Francesco, and also we are very much thankful to Professor Barbara Graziosi from Princeton, who is a very brilliant, bright scholar on Greek literature. She teaches Greek literature, and she's a specialist of Homer and the Odyssey, so that they can talk, they can interact, they can discuss this new production. Please, Giuliano, take the floor.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. I'm very glad and honored to be part of this beautiful conference. First of all, I want to thank everybody from the Istituto Nazionale del Dramma Antico to give me the opportunity to do something special, because it's really a special occasion for me, but also for the universe that I work on. Because going and perform in the theater of Siracusa, it's like going to the most beautiful church to spend a beautiful Sunday. So I would say I'm very, very honored to be there, and especially happy to work with the foundation that has this strong culture since ages, and keeps awake the importance also of the Teatro Antico. I started, I would say, a couple of months ago, working a little bit with the students of the school, and it was amazing to see their eyes and to see how they are also hungry to try also different things, new things. And I have to say, the first time I felt like the first day at school, because it's normal. It's for me, it's the first time working with INDA, so I prepare many things, and then when I arrived there, everything went by itself, because the students took me with them in this journey, and I felt a little bit like Ulysses, because I felt that I was not by myself in this big journey. And so for me, it's very important to collaborate with the students, because I think that it's a little bit also our how do you say, our mandate to be able to give as much as we can of our experiences. So that's exactly what I will try to do with them. Of course, trying to make a beautiful show, because it's the important things, but especially to try to leave them as much as I can of what I had the chance to learn in my career. I will talk to you a little bit about this new experience that we are working on. Sorry, I took a little bit of notes just because we are doing it in English. Otherwise, I wouldn't, but I don't want to make mistakes. So, of course, I had to take a little bit of notes. First of all, I wanted to explain you where I'm going with this production, because as the Teresa Valensise said, it's called like a modern performance, a modern show. So my idea at the beginning was to find a place, the good place to tell the story of Ulysses. And so I started to think a little bit where I could situate, where I could put this story. And it's funny because it came really very, very easily, you know. The theme, the story of my Ulysses, of my last Odyssey, will be in a very familiar place, because it's going to be inside an airport. It's a place where, you know, from which we depart and where we can reach any destination. But at the same time, it's also a place where we can get stuck and we cannot go back where we want to go. So the idea, it's really to spend one night with this 100 unknown traveler, and find themselves listening to these two men that are narrating the story of another man, his journey and his adventure. And gradually, as a spectator, those 100 visitors become themselves the protagonists of these events, embarking on a sort of, I would say, immobile journey. I don't know if we say immobile, but it's going to be a sort of a voyage in the same place. It's a still journey. So the color that I would like to also to give to this opera, it's really to have the possibility to influence different forms of art. The libretto, of course, that Francesco Morosi wrote based on the original translation, and the music also very particular, because we are working with a folk group from Canada that is called the Ruben and the Dark, which is really quite unusual for an experience like this one. But for me, it was really important to take different ingredients and try to make it work with the modernity also of the Odyssey, because I have to say, Ulysses, it's really, I would say, the most modern hero that we study, and also the one that I would say also the most popular, because it's funny, I'm telling you this little story. Before choosing to do the Ulysses Odyssey, I was trying to find what I could do for INDA, and it's my nephew that he's 14 years old that told me, that suggests, why don't you do Ulysses? And so I was quite surprised, because I said, yes, it's a good idea. And he said, you know, I'm studying it now in school, and we are all dreaming when they talk about the journey of Ulysses. So there was this little light that, how do you say, turned on, you know, because I said, that's how I want to bring something. I want to interest also youngest people. And so coming from a teenager, for me, was a very, very good point. So the idea, as I was telling you, so the music of Ruben and the Dark, and that I'm very happy to bring in Italy for the first time, because here it's really the first time they perform. And also, of course, the universe of the choreography that he's with me since always, all the time. And of course, the art of cirque, because it's something also, it's another particular thing that it's part of my, let's say, career, you know. And of course, the singing and the text. So it will be, I would say, a sort of opera with 360 opera with many different universe. We are just starting the rehearsal, so we are in a very, very particular situation, because we are finding also the good balance between the choreography and the text and the music. So it's very work, I would say, very, very thin work to do to suit different things and to put it together. And the next week we will start to work with the actors. So we will do our first reading section, and then the creation will start with all the school. I would like just to tell you a little bit also about why I choose this story, and also telling you also about a little bit about the character of Odisseo, the Odisseo that I'm trying to bring out. It's a character that it's really a human character for me. It's first of all, it's a man. It's a man that maintains his humanity through his adventure, because he's driven by the curiosity and the desire to discover many things. But at the same time, he's always in balance, because being a human and desiring to know something that is the divine. So he has traveled on many experiences, but like us today, like a simple man, you know, he's possessed all the weakness and the doubt that can have whoever, you know. He's not the perfect hero, like above all, you know, he's embarking of this journey, but he's not taking the journey as an hero. He's just he wants to take it because he wants to discover. He's driven by the thirst of adventure, you know, and the curiosity. But he becomes the hero when he decides to go beyond his limitation, you know, and that's for me when it becomes very, very interesting, the character, because he's always in this balance between being a man and at the same time trying to know the divine.
I come in.
Thank you.
So thanks, Giuliano, first of all, for involving me in this project, which is going to be an Odyssey, an actual Odyssey.
It's on the Odyssey.
So, but I hope it's going to have the same result, that we come home safe and sound. What I could add just some words on the libretto and on the text. I'm not saying much because we are lucky enough to have Professor Graziosi, who is one of the best known and most distinguished scholars on the Odyssey. So I leave to her every general discourse on the poem. But I'm saying this on the character of Ulysses, who is, of course, the protagonist of our show. Ulysses is a character, is a fictional character that after the Odyssey has had a life of his own. He's very well known, and he was extremely widely used by poets and film directors and so on. And the general idea that we have in our culture is that Ulysses is that of Dante, basically, is that Ulysses is a hero of knowledge, is one who has an extreme thirst of adventure and a great curiosity, as Giuliano was saying. And of course, all of this is also true. But what I found out by working more closely on the Odyssey is that Ulysses is most of all a suffering character, a suffering hero. And the Odyssey, at least the first part of the Odyssey, which we are going to stage, because by the way, we are going to stage the central books of the poem, that is the part where Ulysses tells his adventures to the Phaeacians who have welcomed him after a terrible tempest. Ulysses, in that part of the Odyssey, most of all suffers for the loss of his mates and for the horrible adventures that he has had. The vast majority of the adventures that Ulysses has lived, he didn't want to have them. Yes, of course, he has a great knowledge of the world and of the peoples of all the world, but he could live without that. He could happily live without that. There's just one episode where he is actually driven by an extreme curiosity to know, to see, And that's with Polyphemus, the Cyclops. And he says explicitly, although my mates continued to tell me, let's go, I stayed there because I wanted to see, okay? But he will have time to, you know, have second thoughts on that decision. What is even more interesting is that those books of the Odyssey are structured in a way that makes Ulysses' suffering double, because of course he is telling us his tales, and when he tells us these tales, he's also suffering. So he suffers twice, not just because he has lived those horrible adventures, but also because telling them is a source of new suffering for Ulysses. And this, although his listeners, the Phaeacians, are extremely happy to listen to him, because as a contemporary audience they also are extremely interested in Ulysses' adventures, and they find them delightful and amazing. But those are not for Ulysses, okay? He suffers while remembering. And so when I started thinking on how to, you know, to structure this libretto, I thought that the biggest, I mean, the most difficult part was to give a unity to a theater event, which is made of a lot of, you know, different tales and different adventures. And then working on that and translating those central books of the Odyssey, I found out that there is a unity, and that unity is the character of Ulysses and is his suffering. And that, by the way, I mean, it rang a bell for me, because, of course, we are staging it in Siracusa, where you normally get to see and to watch tragedies based on the suffering of tragic characters. And there is something similar to our Ulysses. Of course, our Odyssey is not going to be a tragedy, but it's going to have a lot of suffering. Of course, it's going to have also a lot of, you know, wonderful adventures and incredible inventions, not just by Homer, but by Giuliano, as I think I understood. Just one last thing. The libretto is going to be absolutely faithful to the Odyssey. There's not going to be a line that was not written by Homer, except for one, which derives from a contemporary Italian poet whom I like very much, who is called Giovanni Giudici. But I'm not going to tell you which line I quoted by Giudici. So let's see if any of you, after coming to Siracusa, will recognize the line of Giudici that is not by Homer. All that said, I leave the floor to Professor Graziosi for her talk on the Odyssey. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesco. I thank you very much. And I'm very curious to ask Professor Graziosi what a scholar like her would expect from such a production, and if she has any suggestion or any counsel to give the choreographer and the libretto author, so that at the time being we could perhaps incorporate a suggestion in this new production, challenging production, as you can imagine.
I'm taking notes, by the way.
No pressure. Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I am an enormous fan of INDA and of the theater in Syracuse, not just, of course, I mean, the beautiful place and building, but how it has been used is, to my mind, just, you know, really the way that such a place should be used in engagement with local communities, with international communities, with an emphasis, as we have already heard, on public education, on the school system, on getting the youngest generations involved. I couldn't be happier to be here for this reason, because I've been a long distance fan and now I can be a little bit closer. So thank you very much for having me here. I don't want to talk too long about the Odyssey, and there would of course be a lot to say. So I'm trying to think what might be most useful to say in this context. And generally speaking, the most useful thing is discussion and conversation. So my plan is to speak for about 10 minutes, and that should give us enough time to discuss together afterwards and have a little bit of time, in part because I want to hear more about the production, far from giving advice on what should happen in it. But listening to what has been said so far, I would like to start with the words of Telemachus to his mother in Book 1 of the Odyssey. They have a confrontation. They kind of argue with one another. A singer has been singing about the painful returns of the Achaeans after they left Troy. Penelope hears the singer tell this story of pain, as Francesco was saying, and the suffering involved in getting yourself back home after a war. And she goes down and she interrupts the singer and she says, "Don't sing this, it's making me cry, choose something else." And her teenage son, or maybe not quite, well, just over, you know, he must be 19, 20, Telemachus interrupts his mother, says, "Go back to your room. Songs are for men. You mind your own women things." And he says, "And anyway, the newest song is the song that everybody wants to hear." So l'ultima Odissea, the last Odyssey, as we are now going to hear this new production, Morosi, librettist, Peparini, director, is not the last that there will ever be, but it's certainly the newest. So it's l'ultima, nel senso dell'ultima novità. And this is an idea that is already in the Odyssey, which is the oldest Odyssey that we have, already says the newest thing is the best thing, is the thing that people want to hear. So this is a dedication to this new venture and to the young generations that are going to be involved in this newest, latest, last in the sense of latest Odyssey that we're going to have in Siracusa this summer. And honestly, I cannot wait, and I'm going to really try and make myself some plan to get there and to see it. So thank you. Now, as for the Odyssey, what to say in a few minutes, I can give you a few ideas of ways into this poem. And I think because of the time, I'll give you 3 thoughts. One is about the tension between return and survival. Everybody knows, if we think about the Mediterranean today and the people who are crossing every day, putting their lives at risk from the southern shores of the Mediterranean to the northern shores of the Mediterranean, everybody knows that for these migrants, return home and survival is not one and the same thing. So you cross the sea and you hope to survive. Whether or not you will ever return is a completely different question. And this is the same in the Odyssey. The Odyssey is a story of nostos, of homecoming, of going back home, but it's also, and very importantly, a story of survival. And depending on how we balance survival and return, the experience changes, not just for Odysseus, the protagonist, and I'll say a little bit more about him in a moment, but also for the audience or for the readers who encounter this story. So if the emphasis is on survival, the idea is that Odysseus, or the trickster, the person with a lot of cunning and a lot of ability to survive, almost dies all the time, but then manages to survive, comes back alive. So, you know, at the very beginning, he's in the island of Calypso, and the name Calypso sounds a bit like, "I will hide you." You know, he's dead to everybody in the world. Nobody knows where he is. He's as good as dead, but he manages to survive. Or again, you know, in the cave of the Cyclops, he's going to get eaten last, ultimo, but he manages to survive by cunning. Or again, he's almost dead many, many times, and then once more, he manages to survive. So the logic of the adventure is, oh, this is terrible, this is it, this is it, this is it. Now he's going to die. Ah, he survives. And it goes, and it happens again and again and again. There is no end to survival. You continue almost dying and then surviving. And the experience for the audience with that kind of story is an experience of exhilaration and of pleasure. It's fun to hear about these adventures. So survival and all these adventures can be added and more adventures. And Odysseus tells us some adventures in the books that are at the heart of the Odyssey and that are at the heart of this production. But there are many more that he could have and that we know he has after the Odyssey ends. We know he's going to travel again. We see from ancient art that there are many vases depicting Odysseus in various crazy situations that have nothing to do with what we hear in the Odyssey. So the adventures can always be multiplied, and the moments of survival can be multiplied and multiplied, and they have no end. Return is different. Return implies reaching a specific goal, a specific end. And so if we take the Odyssey as a story of a return home to a specific island, Ithaca, to one aging wife, to your own place, that has an ending. And the ending is, of course, as for all human beings, death. So there is a way of listening to the Odyssey that emphasizes what it means to be human and what matters to us and the many limitations involved in being human, including refusing the immortality that Calypso can give you and actually choosing to go home. So this is just by way of framing what the poem is like. If you're interested in how the Odyssey came to be, there are two different traditions that, well, actually more, but let's say two main traditions that come together. One is the kind of tale of the trickster, and that is a kind of fun tale. Someone who, through his own intelligence, by being, to say it in Greek, polymechanos, of many tricks, manages to survive. That's one influence. The other influence is an epic influence, and it has to do with structures of memory and also structure of rulership and of power. Go back home and rule in your palace the way that you're supposed to rule. Claim what is your own thing, your own home. And that is a very different kind of experience for the audience, as I've said, but also in terms of influences of what goes into it and what is involved in taking back what you think is yours, your wife, your house, your household, your island. And nobody reads the second half of the Odyssey. This production is not going to do it. There is a good reason why nobody reads the second half of the Odyssey. It's a bloodbath. Odysseus kills everybody. And if you're a man and you have anything to do with Odysseus, it's really, really bad news. Really bad news. And this is emphasized in the Odyssey right at the beginning through the story of a farmer on Ithaca who has 4 sons. One goes with Odysseus to Troy and he gets eaten by the Cyclops. Because Odysseus doesn't listen and wants to find out who's in the cave, and in the end, he comes out alive, but everybody else dies on that adventure, including the innocent son of this man, Aegyptius, in Ithaca. The other son stays in Ithaca and therefore becomes involved with the suitors of Penelope. And when Odysseus comes back, he kills that son too. So the only ones who survive are the ones that stay right by themselves on the farm and do not get involved with Odysseus at all. Because if you get involved, you're going to have trouble. So nobody really wants to know about that part of the Odyssey. And it's the whole second half of the Odyssey. And it is a story about what's involved in claiming something as your own. It's a story of return and of claiming, and not of survival and of travel. So that's survival and return in a nutshell. Now I've already opened out a little bit. What do we do with Odysseus and what is he like? And Francesco Morosi has already said it, and Giuliano also in his own way. We are very influenced by Dante and what Dante makes of Odysseus or Ulysses. And Dante, was obsessed with the question that was going around in the Middle Ages a lot. And the question was, okay, Odysseus is the ultimate survivor, but how did he die? That was a question everybody wanted to know. And Dante gives an answer. He died because he traveled out and he wanted to go beyond what the human limit. He wanted to tell us what is beyond the human life, to know the divine. And God punished him and his ship sank and down he went into hell. So, and then from hell, he has trouble talking and he is punished for his lies specifically and for telling his comrades to go out in this crazy journey and to go beyond the limits, and by, tricking everybody with the Trojan horse and so on. So we are very influenced by this. But Dante is, of course, Dante didn't read the Odyssey, by the way, but he is right about the Odyssey. The Odyssey somehow reached him, and reached him through very many indirect stories to do with Odysseus, through Virgil, who had read the Odyssey, etc. So what Dante picks up about the Odyssey is at the very beginning, and it's this idea that travel involves traveling through time and through space for sure. But as we have already heard, it's also travel through the mind and through storytelling. So it is very possible to sit still in the theater in Siracusa and actually be traveling and learning through your mind, through watching and listening to the story of Odysseus. So, there are two words that characterize Odysseus in the Odyssey. One is polythlas, much suffering. And we've heard from Francesco Morosi about the suffering of Odysseus, all that he has to go through passively in his adventures, which he doesn't want. A bit like migrants crossing today, things that they have to suffer and they do not want. The other word that characterizes Odysseus is polymechanos, of many tricks and many ways to survive and do what he needs to do. And in the second half of the Odyssey, these two words come together because he pretends to be a beggar, just a traveling beggar. And so he continues to suffer injury, suffer insults, suffer being beaten by the suitors, all the indignities that beggars have to suffer, he suffers. But this, in the case of Odysseus, is a trick. It's a trick that allows him to check what's going on in Ithaca and then reconquer what is his. So polythlas kind of becomes polymechanos after he gets to the end of the journey. However, there is no end to this journey, because here's the trick, the biggest trick of the Odyssey now, not just of Odysseus, but of Homer and in the Odyssey. Death usually is at the end of life. Yeah, we travel from birth to death. We cannot go back. There's no going back anywhere. We're just traveling in one direction. Except that in the Odyssey, going down into the underworld is in the middle. And Odysseus manages to go back even from the underworld, even from the place of the dead. And what does he do when he comes back from Hades? He brings us many, many stories. and the Phaeacians who are listening to these stories, and we who listen to these stories and who will listen to these stories in Syracuse. We cannot conquer death by listening to all these stories that have no time because they come from antiquity, but they will project into the future. So thank you very much. This is all I wanted to say by way of brief introduction, but I think we have now time to have questions and discussion.
Thank you, Professor Graziosi, and I was very glad to hear you and commenting the attempt of Francesco Morosi and Giuliano Peparini to give life, to renew the fascination for the Odyssey and Ulysses. And I still remember one of the most important remarks when we were students at the classical liceo, we were taught that the first adjective to define Ulysses was polytropos. And in this sense, it is a man who of many tricks, but it also is a man of infinite, of enormous, of many resources. What is important to stress for our audience is that INDA is not only a theater, is not only a producer of performances of show, but it is also a research center. As you know, as you all know, we published every year a review, a magazine that is an annual magazine, Dioniso, and we organize every year a conference that reunites lots of scholars, national and international scholars, eminent specialists of ancient literature and ancient drama. And we also have a school that Giuliano mentioned before, l'Accademia d'Arte del Dramma Antico, ADDA, that every year recruits 50 or 60 students from all over the world, all over Italy, and they attend a course in Syracuse for 3 years. And every year they have the opportunity to participate in the shows, in the performances at the Greek Theatre. Last year, Robert Carson recruited 85 member of the choir that he wanted an enormous choir for the city of Thebe. This year, Giuliano Peparini has more than 50 students of ADDA, and that they add to more than 50 performers. So we have an artistic mass of 100 people. And also I want to just to hint that we organize since 30 years, every spring, a festival of the Greek theater for the young people in Palazzolo Acreide, where this year 2,500 students from 90 schools and colleges in Italy and abroad are performing themselves the ancient dramas. So this is just, you know, to give a more extended information. But now I would like to ask Francesco and Giuliano to react to the analysis of Professor Graziosi. And I would like to know if her reflection, her considerations have added something new or have given you some new ideas that you can perhaps introduce in your show.
Can you hear me? Yes, I would say that absolutely listening to Professor Barbara was really inspiring, because I would spend all day just listening to her, because not just as a director, but really as a student, because it's amazing. And also the way she tell it, it's very, very emotional. And of course, the things that the professor said are opening again a lot of doors that were started to be closed, you know. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but absolutely. But this is our, you know, like Odyssey, it's really, we live in pain when we have to create something. So it's just the beginning of the Odyssey, you know. Of course, even listening to Francesco, because we didn't spend so much time together. Now we will spend it when we start to the creation. But of course, it's beautiful to see how a character like Ulysses has so many different aspects, but he looks so much like ourselves, you know, with all the strength, but also the weakness that we have, you know. Of course, you were talking about the pain, and it's strong, and we can feel it inside. But at the same time, I think also is interesting the fact that Odisseo, while he's traveling, is also keep changing, you know, keep also try to manage, you know, the pain of the loss, you know. And this it's exactly what we try to do, you know, when in our life, you know, just trying to get stronger when we live experiences, you know. And of course, he unconsciously start to he go and embark on this voyage, but it's also discovering the unknown, and we all know how scary is the unknown, you know. And I would love, Professor, to have you with us during the creation, because would be really amazing, you know, to do this journey together. But I know you are very busy, so I don't want to
well, I would love that too. And I love your idea of setting the whole thing in an airport. So I was why? In part because, as you say, you can get stuck there. And then I was thinking the other reason why this is so good is that it's a place of strangers, of radical strangers, right? So you can sit in an airport, I think we've all done it, and just watch people and imagine their stories, and you see a great variety. And at the same time, it's difficult to connect with others in the airport. You will only connect with strangers and on a fleeting moment. So if we think about the center of the Odyssey and Hades, and of course, airports can be hell. We all know that. So if you are in hell and you're looking and you're watching, what is interesting about Odysseus is the curiosity that he has for all these shades in the underworld. So going down to the underworld is a universal story in all of the different mythologies of the world, not just Greece, not just Rome, not just the Babylonian epic. We have Far Eastern mythologies that involve going to the realm of the dead. But each story is different, has a different taste. So when Orpheus goes to get Eurydice, it's a romantic tale, and then you look back and you lose your beloved forever. If you are Virgil, you see the future of the Roman Empire. But if you are Odysseus, you're stealing stories. That's what you're doing. Like when he goes to the cave of the Cyclops, he should take some cheese and run away. And if he goes down to Hades or to an airport, what he does is he gets stories and he gives them to us afterwards when it's for his advantage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something also that I think happen many times in the airport is that sometimes when you are waiting and waiting, you are seated close to people that you don't know, but there is something extremely strong that happen, you know, because the contact, also just seated with somebody that you don't know close, you know, for hours, you know, he brings a lot of things. And I think that the journey of Ulysses, it's also this, because the fear, all the adventure that arrives brings him, and he's how do you say, he's a compagnon, he's a companions, you know, extremely together, you know, but not just even physic wise, you know, the fact also to go with many characters, with many people on stage, it's also this. It's the fact also to combine, you know, the strength of a group, you know, getting together, and suddenly the feeling of a character being by himself suddenly, you know. So this is for me, the central point, it's really this. The space is extremely important for me, and not just the space as I said, the airport, but really the space, the emotion that we can get when we are all together, and when suddenly we are all in different spaces. And this is also what happened when he started to separate his companion. He brings a group and he take it in a place, another group goes in another. So it's also a way, you know, to get suddenly, you know, to divide a group, a very big group, and then to bring it together again.
There's one point that Professor Graziosi discussed that I just wanted to take up, which is storytelling. Of course, the first half of the Odyssey, and especially the books that we are dealing with, touch upon a concept that we may call meta-literature. That is, the Odyssey is also a story about telling stories. And this is a monument to Giuliano's instinct of theater, because when he chose what he wanted to stage of all the poem, he just chose the part where, I mean, the Phaeacians have the same experience that we as spectators will have. They are listening to someone who tells them stories. And I hope that we will be able to transmit, okay, this experience, and to share this experience with all the characters on stage. Marina, if you allow me, I would like to read 3 or 4 lines in Italian about this, which is, I mean, they summarize the beauty of the Odyssey, in my opinion.
Go ahead very quickly, and then
very quickly. This is what the king of the Phaeacians tells Odysseus while he is telling the stories about the underworld. C'è bellezza nelle tue parole e nei tuoi saggi pensieri, Odisseo. Hai detto il tuo racconto come un Aedo sapiente, narrando delle tue sofferenze infelici. Ma dimmi ancora, e parla sinceramente. Questa notte è lunga, infinita, e non è ancora arrivata l'ora del sonno. Raccontami ancora le tue straordinarie avventure. And after Odysseus has told again and again other adventures, the poet of the Odyssey describes the atmosphere, and I hope that this is going to be the atmosphere that we will have in Siracusa, which is, disse così, e tutti rimasero zitti, in silenzio, li tratteneva l'incanto. And this is the Odyssey, I think.
Thank you, Francesco. Great translation, and I hope it will be even greater in Syracuse, that, as you remember, is a huge stage, 27 meters wide, 45 meters deep. And I thank you very much again, Giuliano, Francesco, Professor Graziosi, Chiara Avanzati, and Katia Pizzi from Edinburgh and London. And I want to remember, you recall that Giuliano Peparini Ulysses, he will be on stage in Syracuse at the Greek Theatre at the end of June, from 29th to 2nd July. And then he will go on tour to Pompeii in July, 15 and 16 July, to Ostia on 3rd and 4th August. Again in Syracuse in September, on the 20th September, and in Milan at the Teatro degli Arcimboldi on November 26th and 27th. So I hope that everyone who is listening to this talk will have the chance to see the show, either in Syracuse or elsewhere. Professor Graziosi, we look forward to having you with us and to connect with Giuliano and with Francesco during the rehearsal, so that you can advise them properly in a very good way. Thank you again to you all, and we look forward to hosting you again in Sicily and at the Greek Theatre of Syracuse.